Sup YouTube, this is Slidey8Fry here. So I'm a day late on this, but I hope you guys watch and enjoy anyways, although to be honest, this overdue Scott the Woz reaction video the video itself came out December 24th. I finally started recording it, 10 days ago and finished recording it 2 days ago. Yeah, that's way overdue. But yeah, look forward to that when I get to editing soon. That said, let's go. Dang it. Stop being weird. Stop being weird. Okay. Let's go. I'll close that. Angry Video Game Nerd. New video. Look, Contra, how I remember it. And now that is beautiful because he's talked so, even in character, he's talked so positively about Contra. You'd think that by now they would have already talked about, he would have already actually made this video, About time, This is going to be a much more positive video. Although I wonder if he's going to start reviewing more the games that came out later to bring out the anger, of course. Anyways, let's do this. And look, another sponsor at the beginning this time. I mean, I don't really mind. He needs to pay his bills, but still. Straight to the intro, that's way better.
Thanks for watching this episode of Angry Video Game Nerd. But first, I want to tell you about...
Okay, he tricked me into thinking that it was straight to the intro, but then he did his sponsor. I thought he always did his sponsor, then his intro.
Any buffering. And with over 100, find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free by going to expressvpn.com/cinemassacre or by clicking the link in the description below.
He's got to pay his bills. The fact that people seem to be pissed off about the sponsorship thing is ridiculous. I'll skip it because I don't really find his sponsor ads to be, funny like, Ryan George with the astronaut, but yeah.
Let me ask you something. You ever heard the legend of the monkey's paw? It's a mystical, cursed item that appears as a severed hand of a monkey or an ape. And with each of its fingers, it grants a wish to the person who finds it. It's been used for greed and lust, and it always ends in tragedy.
Yes,
well,
every time.
Long ago.
Except for Ned Flanders in the Treehouse of Horror special of The Simpsons. It sucks for the Simpsons family, but when Bart wished to be rich and famous, he should have just wished to be rich without being famous. You know what I mean? That would have worked. That probably would have worked out pretty well. But yeah, I just love how when Homer gives it to Ned Flanders, it's not working out. Ned Flanders gets exactly what he wants.
Kid, I found is in tragedy. Well, long ago, as a kid, I found the monkey's paw.
Oh, of course he did. Awesome. Wow. Classic.
You know what I wish for? I wish that when I grew up, I'd make a living playing video games. And I got that wish.
I wish I did that too. I'd be really happy doing that.
Playing shitty games!
Oh.
Playing shitty games! Oh, the sorrow! Oh, the devastation of the human soul! Oh, and the worst thing is that the other finger I wish for candy and shit, and then the thumb I found out didn't count. That's a ripoff. But I still have 2 wishes left. I'm gonna do it. I wish to play a good game.
Middle finger. Oh. Oh, crap.
Now that's what I'm talking about! Contra!
This classic run-and-gun shooter first landed in the arcades. Set in the year 2633 AD, you take control of the Earth Commandos, blasting away extraterrestrial creatures, robots, and brainwashed human armies. The visuals and aesthetics were heavily influenced by the Alien films, as was Metroid, Xenophobe, and probably too many games to count. It found its way into the home on computers such as the
It might be because I haven't actually played Contra like that much. Like I barely played any Contra games like at all. I remember one in the Sega Genesis back when we used the Sega Channel back in the the early mid '90s. There were like 4 different characters you can pick. One of them was like the standard Contra guide, and I think a popular one that people like to pick was that little robot thing. That little droid thing, and then there was I think there was a woman, and then there was one other. I forget who all 4 of the characters were. I just remember the main guy, and I remember the robot because those were the characters that we always liked to pick. I played a little of that. A lot more recently, although it's not really that recent. It's still years ago, but I played Contra 3 Alien Wars on SNES by downloading it to the Wii, so it's not that recent. It's like 10 years ago. Or more. Then I think I played that on the SNES Classic, and I believe, is it available on the Switch Online service? I honestly don't remember. I haven't actually played my Switch in a while. But speaking of Switch, I do intend to continue with a live stream of Kirby in the Forgotten Land. When I streamed it on day when it came out, Josh Scorcher, also known as the Fiery Joker, was also streaming the game. I just knew right there I had no chance of getting people to watch because somebody much bigger than me was streaming at the same time. But I don't know, maybe now people will watch me stream it, although maybe it's a bit late because the game's been out for like a month now. Just haven't had time. But yeah, I played. I didn't play much of the original Contra on NES. I wish I did, especially with the 30 Live code, the famous Konami code. So I honestly thought the Contra games were based off of like Rambo. I actually thought that because it's a guy with a machine gun, bandana, blasting away a bunch of henchmen. I mean, yeah, there's some weird creatures towards the end. I guess some of them are aliens, but I honestly did not realize it was actually based off of the Alien franchise. I really... Probably because I just didn't play the game that much. I really thought it was based off of Rambo. Maybe it's partially based off of it. I don't know. Let's continue.
MSX2, probably too many games to count. It found its way into the home on computers such as the MSX2, Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, DOS, but yeah. We're talking NES. Funny that the PAL version was called Probotector, which changed the characters into robots. But I'm talking the good old violent flesh and blood human version.
Let me make clear, I will go back to playing bad games, but for this occasion, let's think outside the toilet bowl. It's definitely not the first time.
A while ago, I made a Castlevania retrospective, which was also a Konami franchise. But here, I just want to focus on the first 2 NES games. This is Contra, how I remember it. When I first saw...
Oh my god, I'm witnessing history with this. Because I absolutely love the Castlevania retrospective, how I remember it. I didn't realize, like, when he said how I remember it, I don't know why I didn't realize that, but this is incredible. I always thought that he should do this with Contra, because he references Contra in so many of his episodes. Just like how he references Castlevania in so many of them. Hey, do the clip show where you just Contra, like how you did with Castlevania. Like, that'd be awesome. Because yeah, it was a 4-part episode that was uploaded for the Halloween of 2009, and that was before I started watching AVGN. I started watching AVGN in 2011, by the way. But I've watched every episode in existence. But anyway. I loved the Castlevania one. It's really well made. It's really beautifully done, especially towards the end. Now he's doing a Contra one. It's about time. I always thought he should do that because he always references Contra all the time.
All that cover, I was blown away. 2 Rambo characters with a xenomorph alien head sneak. I was blown away. How I remember it. When I first saw that cover, I was blown away.
It is a cool
2
cover.
Rambo characters with a xenomorph alien head sneaking up on them. Sometimes my dad let me see those type of movies, but I didn't realize at the time the character on the left was clearly modeled after Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator. And if the guy on the right with the dark hair and headband is Rambo, then that's one hell of a team. You put the game in, you start it up, and you see that badass title screen slide in. Straight to the point, like, oh shit, here it comes.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun.
Where's the gorilla?
Then, no story, no wall of text, you just drop from the sky, and the action begins.
Music is badass for NES too.
Yeah!
So you're just racing through, blowing through level after level, laying waste to everything. No, hang on. It was nothing like this, playing it for the first time as a kid. Let me take you back to what it was really like.
Uh-oh. You could have shown a clip of your younger self.
Fuck!
You watch your language in there, mister.
The difficulty is fair, you're given the freedom to shoot in all directions, making your targets accessible, and when you jump, you curl into a ball, making the hitbox smaller so you can dodge enemy fire more effectively. With all the freedom you have, whenever you fail, it's all on you. It's not over something ridiculous. You die, you learn, you do better. Never do you feel like you hit a dead end or don't know what to do. It's just simply about practice and pure concentration. That's why this game is so addicting. It blocks out all other unhappy thoughts, where your only focus is on the geometry and split-second reaction time of dodging those projectiles. You go into a Contra trance. And whenever I'm in this trance, this is what I have to say.
Nothing, yeah, of course. You're in a trance. You're focused on playing. I get that. I've done that in many different
Even though
games
you
I've
die
played.
by one hit, it lets you continue where you left off. It doesn't force you to backtrack, not unless you lose all your lives. And you know what that's called? Fair.
Yeah.
Of course, I should mention the famous Konami code. It was in Nintendo Power, but famously spread through word of mouth. Up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, start. It gives you 30 lives, which is
awesome.
plenty.
And that is the pure definition of cheat.
This is a perfect example of a quality game. The hit detection is spot on. The satisfaction of eliminating targets. The controls respond so instantaneously, it almost feels like it's happening directly from your brain.
Yeah,
And the
it's
music is excellent.
I mean, you could say that about a lot of games, but this is AVGN that talks about shitty games, so this is the first from in a long while.
Oh, and the bosses are so awesome, you're always excited to see what's coming up next. I'll never forget my first impression of the Stage 3 boss.
Oh, shit!
That face snuck into my nightmares. This game is so good, you know what? It pisses me off it's so good.
Here comes the part where I say bad things about the game. Well,
You die in one hit.
Why do the characters wear blue and red? What kind of camouflage is that? That's all I got.
Come on, game. Give me something. That's how good it is. Trying to shake some shits out of this gem is gonna be tough.
How about this? Why is there no boss music on Stage 3? They could have made this moment even more exciting if it wasn't the same music as the level. How about Stage 7? They apparently ran out of music and recycled the theme from Stage 1. Hey, Stage 7 doesn't even really have a boss. I mean, you're basically fighting a door. I never fought no door before. But you want to talk about strange bosses? How about Stage 4? It's a bunch of Transformers that transform.
Ooh.
And if you had any doubt, you're also fighting the Autobot logo. And stage 6? What's up with the karate-kicking robot in front of the jukebox? I don't even know how he expects to hit me all the way up there. As far as pitfalls and hazards go, stage 7 has those annoying spiked walls that pop up out of nowhere. Not that hard to avoid, but you gotta move cautiously. I especially like the ones that are just there already. Like, okay, wow game, you really slowed me down there. I don't know who's ever gotten killed by these things. I guess you can run into them, if you want. This is the flypaper approach. Let's just see if the player runs into it. Then there's the claws that go up and down. Those same claws show up again in Double Dragon 2.
Yeah.
What's up with that? Reminds me of those annoying claw games in the arcade.
I was thinking about that.
The ones where you pick
Dragon
up the
2 there.
toy. Has anyone ever successfully managed to pick up something with those pieces of shit? You know what I love? The spread gun. That is one of the best weapons in gaming history. Whenever that item drops and you get it, it is such a fulfilling moment to just spray bullets all over. And when you lose it, man, does that shed some tears.
Ooh,
You ever
nice.
accidentally pick up a weapon you don't want, like the laser? It usually happens when it lands in your way. Well, the laser's a good weapon because it's so powerful. I mean, look at how fast I annihilate the stage 5 boss.
Wow.
But you can only blast one stream at a time. If you tap it, it has a short range. Of course, I gotta talk about 2-player mode. Even though the
Nice.
characters have official names, Bill Reiser and Lance Bean, my friends and I always called them Blue Pants Guy and Red Pants Guy.
Oh,
if you
come
merge
on.
together, you become Purple Pants Guy.
Yeah.
Having 2 players does not make it any easier, because if you don't carefully plan every move and stay together, you're gonna get fucked. That's what makes this a great co-op challenge.
Stay together. Stay together.
Who are you playing with the gorilla?
Wait up. Oh, man. Stop dying. All right. Go ahead. Take one of my lives. There you go. Oh, come on. Again?
Fuck.
Shitpickle. Shitpickle.
Hey, welcome back, Shitpickle. Haven't seen you in ages. He's made interesting cameo appearances in other episodes, like, Action 52, obviously appearing in the AVGN video games episode, games of the AVGN. And, but the last time he appeared on screen with the nerd, like in the same room, way back in 2006 when he was still called the Angry Nintendo Nerd with that very obscure game that he reviewed, Master Chew and the Drunken Who.
You want to know something really weird about this game? In single player mode, you can actually play with either controller. Yeah, that means if a friend wants to be an asshole, they could grab the second controller and mess you up. But there's a cool little trick I learned from the classified information booklet that came inside of Nintendo Power. On those 3-dimensional hallway stages, if you duck on controller 1 while holding up on controller 2, you can shoot higher. Yeah.
The most coveted moment of any gaming experience is reaching that final level for your first time. It happened to me early one morning before the school bus came. I had a little extra time to kill, and I had no idea I would make it that far. I actually felt nervous and creeped the fuck out.
Yeah.
The ground
I bet.
looks like bloody flesh. There's skeletal aliens piled up, and next thing, these floating shrimp with teeth start coming at you.
And then, oh dear, what the hell is that thing?
Yeah,
That
thing.
is probably one of the most terrifying bosses to come out of the 80s. And after you blow its head off, you can still see a portion of the neck. That's fucking brilliant. I've never seen in any game before where the remains of the boss become part of the background. Then you come to all these mouths. Yeah, mouths on the wall. Could you imagine just being a mouth on a wall of alien bodies?
That would
What
suck.
would they talk about all day? Might be getting some rain. Yeah. Blue pants guy, he's back! Ah! Oh!
So, I heard the final boss was a heart. I had to see it for myself. I was picturing like a Valentine's heart.
But then I see this thing. A realistic, disgusting, pulsating, beating heart with the subtle
Yeah.
hint of a distorted face.
Yes,
Holy,
yes.
horrifying hell. Also, these things are totally the face huggers from Alien.
Meanwhile, the school bus was coming any minute. My mom was calling me for breakfast, but I had to finish the game. I couldn't pause it. What was I going to do? How was I going to pay attention in class knowing I had a Contra game at home paused on the final boss?
Yeah.
It was now or never.
And just in the nick of time, boom!
That's a legendary story. I really appreciate that he actually expressed that. That's amazing. I've had for some reason I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I have been to like important moments in a game and been like, oh no, I got to go to school. Damn it, no, and when I was little. But see, I grew up in the '90s, so a lot of games that I played, you could save. I mean, there were still a lot of games you couldn't save on in the '90s, but I guess I didn't have that problem as much because you could save, and there were some games you could save in the '80s, but most of them you couldn't. Well, a lot of games you could save in the '90s, and some you couldn't. But yeah, I remember having some moments where I was like, "Oh my God, here I am! I finally made it this far," and then I was like, "Oh crap, I have to go though," and and unfortunately, I don't remember if any of them actually ended with me succeeding or if I had to just turn off the game and go. Yeah, I don't know. But anyways, nowadays it's obviously a lot easier, especially if your games are on your phone, or even just on the Switch itself, because the Switch is hybrid, so you can undock it and play it portably. Anyways, let's continue.
I couldn't believe it. I beat a Nintendo game. So I ate my breakfast, I got on the bus, I went to school, and then I bragged, hey, did you ever beat Contra? Well, I beat Contra before breakfast. And then
That's
they
awesome.
were like, so what's the final boss? And I was like, a giant heart. Yeah, sure.
And if you want to get real crazy, after the ending, the game sends you back to level 1, and with each playthrough, it gets harder and harder. Now that's what you call replay value. Here's the thing, Contra still would have been remembered as a masterpiece had it been only one game, but it was a two-punch combo. When I opened those pages in Nintendo Power number 12, it was like hot damn, especially when I unfolded that badass poster that came with it.
I wonder who
Contra
those
2,
actors
I mean
are.
Super C, and it did not disappoint. As soon as you drop from that helicopter, it's on.
Hey, this music.
This is when sequels were sequels. It plays exactly the same and feels just like more levels to the original, though the top view stages are new and a very welcome addition. The control is perfectly fluid, and these stages are among my favorites. Every time I blow up the stage 2 boss, I like to sit in the driver's seat. There's little details I enjoy. Just the fact that after you complete stage 1 and pass through the door, you can actually see yourself through the crack. Dude, stage 3,
that's an
the
interesting
first time I
detail.
saw that robot spider stomping toward me, I almost shit my pants. What a great mini-boss, and that style of music kind of reminds me of that synthesizer score from the first Terminator film. That is the music of a machine coming to kill you.
It is,
But
yeah.
nothing tops the end of stage 6. It's a bunch of horrific faces merged together. You blast them away and watch the fireworks spectacular, which never gets old.
Oh, yeah.
Love those sounds. But wait, it's not over. Ground starts shaking.
Here it comes.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah! That face is amazing. There's something funny about it. I don't know what it is. Just look. Is there anything stupid in this game? Well, near the end of stage 3, there's an earthquake. The ground opens up into pitfalls. But they give you the invincibility item here. It doesn't matter if you're invincible. If you fall in the pits, you die.
That is
So
pretty
why, of
stupid.
all places, did they put the item here?
Okay, that just reminded me of something. Now, I don't know how many of you are watching are really into PC games or RTS games or real-time strategy games. Back in 2015, the final version of like the final expansion of Starcraft 2 came out. That was Legacy of the Void. 2010 was Starcraft 2 Wings of Liberty, which had the Terran campaign and introduced a bunch of people to a Starcraft sequel that had way better controls than the original Starcraft, but it wasn't as balanced as the original game. 2013 brought out the second version of StarCraft 2, which added some additional units to each race, the Terran, Zerg, and Protoss. It's called Heart of the Swarm. It had the Zerg campaign. I actually have an entire playthrough of that uploaded in 2013. Check that out if you'd like. In 2015, the third episode of StarCraft 2, and final one, Legacy of the Void. They added some new units to each race again, and there was a Protoss, and it has the Protoss campaign in it. And there was one thing in that game that really pissed me off, and I even expressed it in the very few videos of that game I have, which I recorded on a desktop I got like back in 2012. That I mean, technically have, but I can't really use anymore. But anyways, yeah, Zeratul a popular character from Starcraft in general. You see it; he's a Dark Templar. You see him in the original Starcraft towards the end of the Protoss campaign. He's he's one of the most important characters in the expansion of Starcraft, Brood War. He's around throughout Starcraft 2. There's some inconsistencies because in the Wings of Liberty, there's a side campaign of Protoss missions that's some kind of vision of the future, and Zeratul is there until the end. But in the third episode of StarCraft 2, Legacy of the Void, you get Zeratul at the beginning of the campaign, and well, he dies. Now, so that's an inconsistency right there. So he's not there till the end, but it was just a vision of things to come, I guess. So that's not too bad. What I think is bad is in Legacy of the Void, they introduced new abilities for Zeratul. Like he's not just permanently invisible and has a blink transportation thing. He had other new stuff, like other abilities that I'd never seen Zeratul have before. And you get him in like the third level, I think it is. And at that point, you're at there's like a time limit going. You have to get through the mission quickly, and it's just before the end of the mission. And then once you complete it, he dies in a cutscene right after, and it's like you introduce these new abilities for Zeratul, all for me to use them for like 10 minutes, and then I can't use Zeratul again. What the fuck? Like, why would you introduce this new stuff for him, but not allow me to really enjoy it? So what the nerd just said about getting invincibility at a part where you'll die anyway, just made me think about that. I know they're completely different games, came out at completely different times, but yeah, it reminded me of that. And I even complained about it like I said, in the few videos of the game I have. I never actually completed Legacy of the Void because I was having problems with my desktop computer at the time, and I was going through a time in my YouTube where I stupidly made decisions to run a secondary channel and focus on that instead of focusing on the only channel that has over 1,000 subscribers, this one, which, by the way, we're getting closer to 2,000. I'd love to get there. I'd love to at some point finally have more subscribers than videos. So if you can help me get there, I'd be greatly appreciated. I posted in the community tab about the race to 2,000. My TikTok I started in July of last year, and it's almost to 2,000 as well. This YouTube I've had for a very long time. I'd like it to be a much bigger success than it currently is. Anyways, yeah, I hate when stuff is introduced to a game and you don't really have any good use for it, like at all. Even in New Super Mario Bros., the first one for the DS, when you first get introduced to that giant mushroom, you have great use for it at first, but when you, in that game, the bottom screen is used for having storage for a secondary item you can use just in case. Kind of like how in Super Mario World, there's a blue box at the top of the screen that will store a secondary item for you. Anyways, you can, in New Super Mario Bros., you can store that giant mushroom on the bottom screen, but I've noticed even back then when I first played the game, I hardly ever had use for it. Like, unless it was like a flat plane going across like that, flat grounds, yeah, it was useful. But in most stages, you had to, there's all these obstacles, you had to jump up and do all this stuff. It just wasn't useful. So, at the very least, there were some stages where it was useful, and when you were first introduced to it, it was extremely useful, but, there were so many times you just could not use it. So yeah, it does suck when there's items that you just don't have much use for in video games. It happens a lot more than it should. But yeah. Anyways, why don't I continue? I've been talking for a long time.
It's invincibility item here. It doesn't matter if you're invincible. If you fall in the pits, you die. So why, of all places, did they put the item here?
Yeah.
Stage 4, you have to keep stopping to blast away bubbles. Come on. Bubbles?
Again with the bubbles.
Why do bubbles kill you?
I don't know.
Really. How do the bubbles do harm?
Maybe it's because these guys are so macho. They have such extreme pride in their masculinity that something like bubbles hurts them so deeply inside, it just flat out kills them.
That made me immediately think of what he said in the Arnold Schwarzenegger episode 10 years ago, when you're so masculine, bubbles are your kryptonite. But the way he described it here was a little more in depth. I liked that. That was good. That was good. My only theory about how these bubbles could actually kill you, they're of an extremely high temperature. Like, it's so hot that it just burns you. Like, maybe whatever they're stored in is storing them at an extremely high temperature. So when it spits it out, it touches you and kills you just like that. I mean, it's unlikely, because I think if the temperature was that high, it would probably really warm up the place even more than that, or burn up the whatever's holding the bubble itself. But I don't know. It's a theory.
The boss of this stage is literally a showerhead shooting lasers. I wonder what function this thing serves on a normal day. Does some robot take a laser shower in it? The challenge is addicting, and this game boils down to instincts and memorizing patterns. For example, the stage 6 boss, the chrome-colored blob of skulls. You gotta aim for that target. But you can't, because you gotta watch the ground for these little skulls. But you can't look at the ground because you gotta pay attention to those red things in the air. But you can't do that either because the game's driving you nuts. It's a combination of offensive, defensive strategies.
Yeah, it made me think. Now I'm thinking about that room in Before Death in the Castlevania episode when he said, "You can't focus on the knights because you got to focus on the Medusa heads. You can't focus on the Medusa heads because the game's driving you crazy."
But it becomes part of you. It's in your blood. 2-player mode is just as hard as ever. You gotta stay together, or else this kind of shit happens.
Yes,
especially on the earthquake part.
Oh, I bet. Ooh.
At any stage where you're going up.
Yeah, that's so
The
annoying.
last 2 stages get out of hand with the alien references. I don't know whether to call them nods or rip-offs. But the creatures that hatch from the eggs are blatantly face-huggers.
Yeah.
And the xenomorphs are exactly that. They are xenomorphs from Ridley Scott's Alien.
Yeah.
And if that's not enough, the final boss is the space jockey, the top part at least, which was the dead alien pilot from the original Alien and later Prometheus. I think Prometheus should have ripped off Contra, just for good measure.
That'd been funny
Anyway,
as hell.
the satisfaction of defeating that final boss is just as great as ever. And overall, I love this game just as much, if not more, than the first.
Wow.
Like Alien and Aliens, I think of them as a perfect pair. To me, the NES will always be the home of Contra, those first 2 games released in '87.
I hope you play the
But if
later
you want to
ones.
move over to the Game Boy for a second, there was a third Contra title released in '91, Operation C. This was the first portable Contra game, and surprisingly, it retains most of the smooth gameplay that you've come to know. So if you
It even
wanted to
has the
play
music
Contra
from
on
the
the
first
go,
game.
this one did not disappoint. Now, if you want to step into 16-bit territory, let's go over to the Super Nintendo. As
Yes.
announced in the Super Nintendo Player's Guide, the next game would be called Super Contra 4, but when it came out in early '92, it was called Contra 3, The Alien Wars. And as a successor, holy hell, this showed you the difference 16 bits made.
Wow! Oh my god, this is fucking awesome! It's fucking awesome! It's fucking awesome! Wow, Contra just keeps on being awesome.
But then in late '92 came another NES title, Contra
I
Force.
didn't know that.
Oh, it's shit! It's shit! It's shit! It's shit! Ah!
What is up with the control? It's like you're moving underwater! And just to
Oh.
think, this came out after Super C. This is not a Contra game, and I mean that. In Japan, it was originally meant to be called Arc Hound, but was changed into a Contra game last minute after it was localized for North America.
Contra Force? More like Contra Force the shit out your ass!
In true Konami fashion, when it came to 16-bit, they gave us 2 different games. While Super Nintendo had
Yeah.
Contra 3, Sega Genesis had Contra Hardcore
think that's the one I
in
played on
'94.
Sega Channel.
How awesome was this? Well, just cue the fucking montage.
Like some kind of fox man or dog man. Awesome.
This one gave you a selection of characters,
Yeah.
including a wolf. A Contra game where you can play as a motherfucking wolf. It even
about
had
the
branching
robot?
paths and 6 different endings. One where you go back in time and marry a monkey. Otherwise,
that's
it's the
weird.
same run and gun action with great variety, giant bosses, and all the good stuff you could ever ask for. And then we move over to the PlayStation, and here
He skipped out on the robot. Everybody loved playing as the robot in that game.
we have Contra Legacy of War! Oh, God! Oh, and C, the Contra Adventure! Oh, have mercy!
That's terrible.
Ah, make it stop! Oh, the shits! I can't take the shits! Ah, make it stop! Make it stop!
Contra 4 on the DS. Now
That
that
has
was
to
a
be
good
good.
one. Just
Yeah.
like a classic Contra game,
Makes
but
sense.
portable.
Of course, there's plenty more Contra games, and maybe some other time I'll go in depth with the bad ones. There could always be a new Contra game coming out, and it might meet my approval or might not. But it seems even with the best games nowadays, no matter how good, nothing will ever surpass my experience with those first 2 Contras on NES.
It's understandable.
And why is that?
You
I
grew
don't
up with
know.
them.
And when compared to all the NES turds I've dissected, like Akari Warriors, Raid 2020, and Rambo, it begs the question, was Contra the standard? Or was it so far above standard, so exceptionally magnificent, that it made all the others suck?
In that same way, I wonder if the past set an unreasonable standard for the future. Do we hold our childhood so dear because it was better or just familiar?
When I think back to Contra, I'm not just remembering the 80s. I'm remembering that time in the 2000s when I was remembering the 80s. It's a memory that's been photocopied countless times.
Yeah,
it's
that
been
makes
through
sense.
many filters and distortions. There's even major holes when I forgot about Contra for a bit.
Of course.
You know what happened to my original cartridge? I sold it. Sometime after the N64 came out, I took a handful of my games and I brought them over to the local Funkoland. They offered me $7 for Contra, and I accepted. You know what I did with that $7? I went over to the deli and bought a sandwich.
Ooh,
to this day, I'll never remember any details of that sandwich. Did it have lettuce? Was it any good? I don't know. Today, if you were to ask me, hey, you remember that sandwich? I'd say, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Exactly.
But Contra, that sticks with me. And even if I had to part with it for a while, sometimes you have to temporarily forget about something before you fall in love with it again. And when you come back to it,
It's true.
It's the same as it was, even though everything else has changed. Life has changed. Right. The world has changed. But sealed in that plastic slab is a time capsule of your youth, fossilized in ROM data on a circuit board. It's read-only memory, the type that doesn't change. As soon as you pop that fucker in your NES, you're back. You're back to an innocent summer day with no such thing as internet. Instead, you and your friends are running around with Nerf guns and super soakers, pretending you're the guys from Contra. You're standing on a swing, holding onto its chains like a ladder of a helicopter. You jump off, rolling into the grass, the jungle. If it's not that, you're setting up G.I. Joe figures in the mud to stage epic battles. That skill you had of creating a fantasy land out of nothing, that wild imagination and backyard adventure was fueled by those pixelated military dudes blasting away alien creatures and robots. That's what Contra's all about. And maybe you lost touch with those old friends, but when you play that game once more, you think of them again. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere in some part of the world, they're remembering it too. Almost as if they're still sitting on the living room floor beside you. And maybe you had a grandparent or family member who you lost, and they're still watching you play.
Even as strangers, we can have a shared connection of talking about old games, and that is nothing to be angry about. That joy in its simplest form comes down to simply asking someone, hey, remember Contra? And the answer is fuck yeah.
Alright, that was an amazing episode. It really was. I am so happy I saw that. Wow. Just how he summed it up at the end was incredible. Like, really, really incredible. There are, as a kid, I actually didn't have that many friends. There were some I had, but not that many. I lost touch with all of them except one who I am still friends with now. As a teenager, I had more friends than I did as a kid. And these people did remain friends into my adulthood. Although some of them are currently not my friends now, and it's not something I'm going to get into. It's just disagreements we had that I guess that's at the time we couldn't get over. To be honest, there's actually a good chance um, I can be friends with them again, honestly. But the ones I knew as kids, I don't even have any way of reaching them. And to be honest, I don't think we actually really connected that well in comparison to the ones I knew growing up as teenagers to adulthood. Um, there are there are friends I made as an adult, mostly just through college. Um, one of which you've seen in videos of mine, or in live streams. We've done duo reaction videos before together. Um, another of which you may have seen if you watched a particular Twitch stream of mine, so most likely you haven't seen him. Although this other one, he does videos just like I do, except my YouTube channel is much bigger than his, even though mine's really small. However, he does have a Fiverr and seems to be doing paid video work for other people, which is something I wish I could do, to be honest, but nobody's really noticed my work in that regard. This would not qualify for a demo reel because there's no editing or anything, it's just a reaction. I probably should make a demo reel of my edited works in the past, though. So in a way, like, he's more successful in that regard, while I'm more successful by having in the bigger YouTube community. But anyways, fortunately, I still am in touch with these guys, as well as a friend of mine I knew since the 4th grade who I mentioned earlier. But I have lost touch with the other ones, and there weren't really that many to begin with, but sometimes I do have some fond memories of playing video games with them. Does bring up some memories for sure. There's also the fond memories of, I mean, this is a group in the 90s, there was the fond memories of actually getting to the end of these classic games for the Super Nintendo and the N64 and the PS1 and the Sega Genesis. I have a lot of fond memories of these classic games. I look back at that time and am always much happier with how life was then compared to now. But I also realize nowadays that things, in most cases, are still better. Like, video games are more advanced, more have better quality. Um, And then, of course, the internet. Like, internet sucked ass in the 90s. Most people didn't even have internet. Those who did, it was incredibly slow and barely worked. In the 2000s, we had internet. We did have garbage AOL at one point, but then we upgraded to DSL, and that wasn't good either. Too often when I played Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne, and played online games, I would get disconnected during the games, and in that game, being disconnected counted as a loss. So I got like a bunch of losses that I should not have gotten because I kept getting disconnected because of phone calls interrupting the game and disconnecting me. Since cable internet, that hasn't been an issue, and also nowadays, I mean, who has a landline anymore, right? Our cell phones, we just use those for our phone calls. Why add an extra expense of having a landline that you're just not going to use? Wow, this went on a long time. Did not mean for it to be that long, but I mean, this video gave me a lot to say. I was kind of hoping for a 4-part retrospective from the fucking nerd, because he did that for the Castlevania games, but he just did one video for Contra games, and mostly focused on the NES ones that he grew up with. But then I'm glad he actually brought up Alien Wars on the SNES and Hardcores on the Sega Genesis, because those games are awesome. I mean, as much as I haven't played either of them that much, but those games are awesome. But it's sad that when that later on the PS1 they screwed up. What's really stupid though is that they could have easily made 3D Contra games good. For example, look at the route that Metroid took. Um, I personally thought the original Metroid on NES sucked. I don't like that game. Like, so many rooms look identical. There's no map system, so it's really hard to know where you're going in that game. I didn't like the original Metroid on NES. I liked Metroid 2 Return of Samus on the Game Boy. That was fun. It's not that great, but it's fun, and it makes sense that there's a remake of it, obviously. Um, but Super Metroid, the third Metroid game on the Super Nintendo, that game is incredible. It's still one of my favorite games of all time. I might even do a live stream of it just because I love that game so much. Um, and I think that actually even improved the standard of run and gun because um, you don't actually have to, like in the Contra games, to aim and fire diagonally. You do actually have to move your character to do it. But in Super Metroid, you don't. There's button. There's well, it helps that the Super Nintendo controller has way more buttons than the NES controller, anyways. But yeah, L and R triggers can aim up, aim diagonally up, or aim diagonally down, and so you can do that without moving, or you can choose to do that when you're moving too. Either way, you can even do it while you're crouching. Um, but yeah, there was never a Metroid game on the N64. You'd think there would be, but there just never was. The only semblance of Samus I could think of on the N64 was her character on the original Super Smash Bros. That was it. There might have been references in other games on the N64, but I don't know what games those would be. Um, so continuing on, GameCube comes out, Metroid Prime comes out. This is what the route they took for Metroid in 3D, first-person shooter. It's still got the elements of exploring, upgrading Samus, um, all that good stuff. It still has those elements, but to make the 3D work, it's a first-person shooter and pretty good actually. It's really fun to play, especially Retro Studios. They were smart in realizing, hey, we're not using a mouse and keyboard, which controls way better on an FPS. We're using a GameCube controller. Don't get me wrong, it's a good controller, but let's have a lock-on button. You press that to lock onto your target and just fire at it. It's a good feature, Um, and they went above and beyond. You can scan things to research and increases your completion percentage. Um, So what I'm saying, Contra could have easily made their 3D games first FPS games. They could have easily made them first-person shooters and made them good. But instead, they were like these 3D platform shooters that I guess didn't work. I mean, the issue with that is that it's kind of hard to aim when to aim your weapon when you're controlling in that kind of way. But if you do it from a first-person view, you see where your gun is pointing. You can clearly see it, and you just you fire at it. I don't know if Contra has ever done an FPS game. I don't know if Konami's ever done an FPS game in the Contra, but or it doesn't even have to be Konami. Konami can give permission to another company to do it, but yeah, they should. If it hasn't been done, there should be a Contra game that's an FPS. I know we're oversaturated with way too many first-person shooters nowadays. Although I think it's becoming, I think there more genres are coming back though. But we've had so many FPS games for so damn long now that it's getting tiring how many of them there are. But I actually think a Contra FPS could work. Unfortunately, it might be too little, too late because there's too many FPS games. So if they made one now, it might just kind of get buried beneath the Call of Duties, the Kill Zones, and like the various other FPS games that still come out nowadays. That Red Dead. Well, I guess that's not first person, but just all these other games. So if they had tried that back then, maybe could have worked, you know. People loved GoldenEye on the N64, even though if somebody played it now, after they played a modern FPS, they probably wouldn't like it because the controls worked for us back then because we were used to it. But if you played it, if you were like somebody who wasn't born back then, like you were born much later, you probably wouldn't enjoy GoldenEye because of the controls. And same thing goes for Perfect Dark, which is a huge improvement over GoldenEye. And I grew up back then and saw it that way back then too. There was a lot more they added to Perfect Dark that made it better than GoldenEye. The only issue that you can really have with Perfect Dark is when you do 2 players or more and have 8 combat simulants to go against. It can cause lag and choppiness, which is frustrating as hell. But that was probably just because of the limitations of the N64. Really, it's not because of the game. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Click that bell icon to add me notifications. And by the way, I do have memberships, so please feel free to join. You can get these cool custom emojis, even as low as the $1 per month, 99-cent per month rate. And there'll even be exclusive videos that I wouldn't upload otherwise. Usually because of some things I might say or point out that I just wouldn't post publicly. Anyways, thank you so much.